Unlike onshore mineral exporters, some offshore gas producers aren't required to pay royalties. A report by the independent think tank, the Australia Institute, says that means Australians are missing out on billions in royalties each year, with more than half of the gas exported royalty-free. Executive Director at the Australia Institute, Richard Dennis, says last year those exports were valued at $149 billion.
You go through who's paying royalties and who's not. Basically, most of the offshore gas in Australia pays absolutely no royalties at all. The Commonwealth chooses to collect royalties on gas from the North West Shelf, but the Commonwealth chooses not to collect any royalties on other offshore projects. So when you multiply the amount of gas from those projects by the price, that's the number we come up with. But if the gas industry or others would like to tell us what they think the value of the gas they got for free was, we'd be happy to have that debate.
Your report says Australia is giving away gas reserves for free, but WA and Queensland are both charging royalties on the onshore deposits, so it's not all for free.
That's right. So this is the point, that we know how to collect royalties. The West Australian government does it, the Queensland government does it, and indeed the Commonwealth government does it. The Commonwealth does collect some royalties from one project on the North West Shelf. It's just decided to not collect royalties from the other. So while the gas industry like to say it's our royalties paying for schools and hospitals, firstly, that's just not true. We spend far more money on services than we get from the gas industry, and of course we subsidise the gas industry. But the reality is, if we were to collect a lot more royalties, well then by their argument, we could spend a lot more on schools and hospitals.
When it comes to the federal government, it administers the Petroleum Resources Rent Tax on 6 of the offshore gas projects mentioned in your report. It is collecting some revenue.
It absolutely is collecting some revenue, just not very much. I mean, to put it into context, Australian university students spend more money on their HECS payments than the Commonwealth government gets from the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax. Countries like Norway, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they tax their gas industry far more heavily than us. They still have a gas industry, but they also have much higher levels of spending or much lower levels of other taxes. Australia's got the worst of both worlds. We're one of the biggest gas exporters in the world, but we're collecting trivial amounts of tax from things like the PRRT. And then, of course, we have enormous companies like Exxon that have literally never paid any company tax here in Australia.
Do you think there's a risk in changing the royalty regime? It could deter gas investment in Australia.
Well, no, I don't. I don't see a risk of that, in the sense that I think the gas industry, which is enormously profitable at the moment, would just pay those taxes and be unhappy about it. But let's be clear, if we're trying to tackle climate change, and that's a big if in Australia, but if we're trying to tackle climate change, there needs to be less gas development in the future. There needs to be less fossil fuels being produced and consumed in the future if we are to tackle climate change. So it's kind of bizarre that the gas industry's threat is that if you try to collect a decent amount of tax from us, we might stop producing so much gas, because actually that's what we need them to do.
The independent Senator David Pocock has called the gas multinationals leechers, but they're not doing anything illegal here. Who's to blame?
Oh, the government's clearly to blame. And look, a parasite is something that lives off a much bigger host. And clearly the gas industry is extracting our gas and then, selling it for its profit. Now, that's a great deal for them. Hats off, well done gas lobbyists, well done whoever's doing their public relations and their government relations. It's spectacularly effective. But from an economist's point of view, this is just the easiest problem to fix. The economics of charging a royalty are obvious. The economics of having a petroleum resource rent tax that works are obvious. The politics are great. The Australian public overwhelmingly think that foreign gas companies should be paying us when they take our gas out of our ground.
You're calling for an inquiry into the management of gas and an overhaul of the gas royalties charged. If it's so politically and economically easy, why hasn't it been done already?
Oh, because of the inside pressure of the gas industry, obviously. The Australian public thinks that the gas industry should be paying for the gas. The economists think we should be doing it. There's plenty of examples internationally of countries doing it. But clearly, somehow the pressure exerted by the gas industry on successive Australian governments has reaped tens of billions of dollars in rewards for them. Now, it's a democracy. We can keep doing dumb things if we want to, but if this government or a future government wants to have more money for schools, more money for hospitals, more money to tackle climate change, or even if it just wants to lower taxes for someone else, there is such a simple tax reform opportunity here. It's sitting right in front of us.
Richard Dennis, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Visit australiainstitute.org.au for all our latest research, commentary and analysis, as well as details for upcoming events and webinars.